He thought it was just ice cream. She called it the only thing that doesn't taste like war. He didn't mean to start a habit. It was a hot afternoon, the kind where Earth's air sticks to your skin. The alien delegation had arrived earlier that week, and most of them were still adjusting to gravity, temperature, and the strange way humans smiled at everything. She stood out, not just because of the faint shimmer in her skin or the way her eyes didn't blink, but because she never spoke, just watched, quiet, curious, alone. So he did something simple. He bought her ice cream. He didn't explain it, just handed her the cone and waited. She stared at it like it was a weapon, sniffed, touched it, then finally took a cautious lick. She froze, literally. Her breath hitched. Her eyes went wide. She looked at him like he'd just handed her a piece of a god. Then she whispered, barely audible, "What is this?" "Ice cream," he smiled. "I need more." From that day on, she kept finding him. Outside the embassy, at the shuttle dock, once even at 3 a.m. outside his apartment. Every time she'd say the same thing. "Where is the cold sweetness?" He tried to explain moderation. He really did. But her face would drop, her voice would soften, and she'd say, "It's the only thing on this planet that doesn't taste like war." So he bought her another cone. Every time. Until one day, sitting beside him on a bench as the ice cream dripped down her fingers, she said, "You gave me something that melted, but stayed." He looked at her confused. She smiled, just a little. "Everything on my world is hard, sharp, preserved. Your ice cream taught me softness, and you taught me kindness." And for once, he didn't have a joke ready. He just passed her a napkin and said quietly, "I'm glad you like it." She nodded, licking the last bit from her thumb like it was sacred. "I don't like it," she said. "I need it. You and the cold sweetness. Both." And he realized he wasn't just giving her ice cream anymore. He was giving her the one thing her world never allowed her to have, comfort. And maybe without meaning to, she was becoming his comfort too. The realization sat heavy in his chest as they remained on the bench, watching the summer sun cast long shadows across the park. Around them, children laughed and chased each other, while parents chatted on nearby benches. Normal life continuing as if there wasn't an alien diplomat sitting among them, savoring the last molecules of vanilla from her fingertips. Her name was Alara. At least that's what humans called her, because her actual name involved sound frequencies beyond human hearing. She was the cultural attaché for the Vexillian delegation, tasked with understanding human customs and facilitating mutual comprehension between species. In the 3 weeks since first contact, the diplomatic corps had been working around the clock to establish communication protocols, trade agreements, and security measures. But not Alex. He was just the embassy's IT specialist, the guy they called when the translation software glitched or when the climate control needed adjusting to accommodate alien physiologies. Nothing in his job description mentioned ice cream ambassador. "Will you be at the embassy tomorrow?" Alara asked, her voice like distant wind chimes. Her language centers had adapted quickly to English, though her speech still carried a melodic quality that made even simple questions sound like the beginning of a song. "Scheduled maintenance on the comm systems." Alex nodded. "Should be there all day." "Good." She folded the sticky napkin with precise movements. "I will find you." The way she said it, not "I'll see you" or "let's meet," but "I will find you," made Alex smile. Director, determined, utterly Vexillian. "Try for after lunch this time," he suggested gently. 3 a.m. visits might give my neighbors the wrong idea. Confusion flickered across her iridescent features. "Wrong idea? They might think..." Alex felt heat rise to his cheeks. How exactly does one explain dating implications to someone who probably reproduces by cellular division or something equally alien? "Never mind. Just daylight hours are better for ice cream." "Noted." She stood in one fluid motion, her silver-blue diplomatic robe catching the evening light. "Until tomorrow, Alex Davidson." She always used his full name, as if anything less would be imprecise. He'd stopped correcting her after the third time. "Until tomorrow, Alara." As she walked away, her gait still slightly stiff from adjusting to Earth's gravity, Alex couldn't help wondering what he'd gotten himself into. Fraternization with alien dignitaries wasn't explicitly forbidden in his contract, but ice cream dates hadn't been covered in the orientation either. Not that they were dates. Definitely not dates. Just a human showing an alien one of Earth's simple pleasures. Cultural exchange at its most vanilla. Alex groaned at his own mental pun and gathered his things. Tomorrow would bring another day of troubleshooting, diplomatic networks, and apparently another ice cream expedition. The embassy hummed with activity the next morning. Humans in press suits hurried between conference rooms, carrying tablets loaded with translation programs and trade proposals. The Vexillians moved more deliberately, their tall forms gliding through the corridors with almost mechanical precision. Alex spent most of the morning buried in server racks, updating security protocols and clearing cache translation errors. By lunchtime, his back ached and his stomach growled in protest. He was just packing up his tools when a familiar presence appeared in the doorway. "Alex Davidson," Ilara stated, more announcement than greeting. He startled, nearly dropping his tablet. "Ilara, I thought we said after lunch?" "It is after the designated human lunch period," she replied, her head tilting slightly. "The cafeteria has emptied." Alex checked his watch. 2:30 p.m. He'd worked straight through his break without realizing it. "Right. Sorry, I got caught up in work." He ran a hand through his disheveled brown hair, suddenly aware of how rumpled he must look compared to her immaculate appearance. Ilara's expression didn't change. Vexillian facial muscles weren't designed for human-style expressions, but something in her posture softened. "Your work is important. The networks must function for our peoples to communicate effectively." "True, but—" Alex's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. "You require sustenance," Ilara observed. "I could eat," Alex admitted, "and I believe someone was promised cold sweetness." For the first time that day, Ilara's eyes brightened with something like excitement, though she'd probably deny such an emotional response if questioned by her superiors. They left the embassy through a side entrance, Alex nodding to security as they passed. The guards had grown accustomed to seeing him with a Vexillian diplomat, though their expressions still held curiosity. The ice cream parlor was 3 blocks away, a small family-owned shop that Alex had discovered years ago when he first moved to the city. The bell jingled cheerfully as they entered the cool, sweet-scented interior. "Well, if it isn't my favorite customers," Mrs. Patel called from behind the counter, her weathered hands already reaching for a scoop. "The usual?" "Yes, please," Alex replied. "Vanilla in a cone for my friend, and I'll try the salted caramel today." Ilara watched with rapt attention as Mrs. Patel expertly rolled perfect spheres of ice cream onto the cones. This ritual had become familiar, but her fascination never diminished. "Here you go, dear," Mrs. Patel said, handing Ilara her cone with a warm smile. "Enjoy." "Thank you for the cold sweetness," Ilara replied formally, causing Mrs. Patel to chuckle. "Such nice manners. You could teach some of my human customers a thing or two." Outside, they found their usual bench in the small plaza, now bathed in afternoon sunshine. Ilara took her first lick with the same reverence as always, her eyes closing briefly in appreciation. "I have been researching this substance," she announced between careful licks. "Ice cream?" Alex asked, wiping a drip from his chin. "Yes, it is a frozen dairy emulsion containing approximately 10% milk fat, 12% milk solids, 15% sweeteners, 0.2% stabilizers, and 0.3% emulsifiers." Alex nearly choked on his caramel swirl. "You've been studying the chemical composition of ice cream?" "Knowledge is essential to understanding," she replied simply. "For instance, I now comprehend why the texture changes when it melts. The crystalline structure destabilizes as thermal energy increases." Something about hearing ice cream described in such clinical terms made Alex laugh. "And does understanding its molecular structure make it taste any less amazing?" Ilara considered this, taking another thoughtful lick. Perhaps some experiences transcend analytical comprehension." "That," Alex said, pointing his cone at her, "is possibly the most profound thing anyone has ever said about ice cream." A small crease appeared between Ilara's brow ridges, her version of confusion. "Is ice cream not worthy of profound contemplation? Most humans just enjoy it without thinking too deeply about it. Your species often overlooks the significance of simple pleasures," Ilara observed. "On Vexilia, all consumption is calculated for maximum nutritional efficiency. Taste is irrelevant." "That sounds joyless," Alex said carefully, not wanting to offend. "Efficiency is our highest value," Ilara replied, but her eyes remained fixed on her melting cone, watching a droplet trace a path down the side. "Or so we are taught." Something in her tone made Alex pause. For all the diplomatic meetings and cultural briefings over the past weeks, This felt like the first genuine glimpse into Vexillian society, and perhaps into Alara herself. "Is that why you like ice cream so much?" he asked quietly. "Because it's inefficient?" Alara was silent for a long moment, her fingers gently rotating the cone to catch the melting edges. "It serves no practical purpose," she finally said. "It provides minimal nutrition relative to its caloric content. It requires energy to freeze and maintain. It delivers momentary pleasure that quickly fades, necessitating more consumption." She paused, her eyes meeting his. "It is everything Vexillian culture abhors." And yet, she continued, her voice dropping lower, "when I taste it, I feel present, connected to the moment in a way that efficiency never allowed. It is temporary, impermanent, like the existence of all living beings, and perhaps that is precisely why it matters." Alex stared at her, ice cream forgotten in his hand. In 3 weeks of troubleshooting translation software and adjusting climate controls, he'd never expected to have an existential conversation about the meaning of life with an alien diplomat over dessert. "That's beautiful," he said finally, meaning it. Something like embarrassment flickered across Ilara's features. I have spoken inappropriately. My observations are not aligned with official Vexillian philosophy." "Hey," Alex said gently, "you're allowed to have your own thoughts. That's kind of the point of cultural exchange, learning from each other, even if it sometimes challenges what we've been taught." Ilara's posture remained rigid, but her voice softened. "On Vexilia, such individual perspectives are discouraged. Harmony requires uniformity of thought." "Sounds more like control than harmony," Alex observed, then immediately regretted his bluntness. "I'm sorry, that was presumptuous." To his surprise, Alara didn't take offense. "Your assessment may have merit. I have observed that human diversity of thought, while inefficient and often contentious, produces remarkable innovation and adaptation." "We're messy, but we get there eventually," Alex agreed with a smile. They fell into comfortable silence, finishing their ice cream as the afternoon crowds ebbed and flowed around them. Alex found himself studying Alara's profile. The elegant curve of her cranial ridge, the slight shimmer of her skin in the sunlight, the careful precision of her movements. 3 weeks ago, she had seemed utterly alien. Now, despite their obvious differences, he was beginning to see the person beneath the diplomat. "May I ask you something, Alex Davidson?" Ilara broke the silence. "Of course. Why did you offer me ice cream that first day? I was not part of your assigned duties at the embassy." The question caught him off guard. He'd asked himself the same thing more than once over the past weeks. "Honestly, you looked lonely." He shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "And ice cream makes most people happy, so I thought it might make you happy too. Simple as that." "Loneliness," Alara repeated the word carefully. "The emotional state of isolation or disconnection from others." "Yeah, I guess I recognized it because I felt it too. Even in a crowd, even surrounded by your own species, you can still feel alone." Ilara was quiet for a long moment. "Your assessment was correct," she finally said, "though I would not have used that term myself. Vexillians do not acknowledge emotional states as valid experiences." "What would you have called it?" "Functional isolation for optimal observational efficiency," she replied, then added with what might have been a hint of irony, "We prefer longer terminology." Alex couldn't help laughing. "Well, whatever you call it, ice cream is a pretty good cure." "Indeed, as is companionship." Ilara looked directly at him then, her large, unblinking eyes reflecting the afternoon light. "Thank you, Alex Davidson." "For the ice cream?" "For seeing me," she said simply. "Not as a Vexillian diplomat, not as an alien specimen, but as someone who might enjoy cold sweetness on a hot day." Something warm unfolded in Alex's chest, a feeling he wasn't quite ready to name. "Anytime, Alara. That's what friends are for." "Friends," she repeated as if testing the word. "Yes, I believe that term is appropriate for our association. Definitely more accurate than ice cream acquaintances," Alex agreed with a smile. As they walked back toward the embassy, Alex found himself wondering what the protocol was for friendship with an alien diplomat. There probably wasn't one. They were in uncharted territory, creating the map as they went along. And somehow that felt exactly right. The following days fell into a pattern. Alex would complete his maintenance tasks at the embassy, Ilara would appear when her diplomatic duties allowed, and they would venture out for ice cream. Sometimes their conversations were profound, touching on the differences between their worlds or the nature of consciousness itself. Other times, they simply sat in comfortable silence, watching people pass by. Mrs. Patel began experimenting with flavors for Alara, offering small samples alongside her standard vanilla. Chocolate was deemed complex but agreeable. Strawberry was pronounced reminiscent of the sacred flowering pools of Vexilia's third moon. Mint chocolate chip, however, was politely but firmly rejected. The sensation is similar to a defense mechanism on my world, Ilara explained as they left the shop. A small creature that releases cooling toxins when threatened. So basically, mint tastes like alien skunk spray to you? Alex asked, trying not to laugh. Your comparison is imprecise but not entirely inaccurate, Ilara conceded. These small discoveries delighted Alex. Each preference, each opinion Ilara expressed seemed like a tiny rebellion against the Vexilian doctrine of efficiency above all else. He began to notice other changes too. The way she sometimes used contractions in her speech, how she'd occasionally mirror human gestures like a tilt of the head or a wave of the hand. Small things but significant. It was during their third week of friendship, after the ice cream habit had become firmly established, that Alex first noticed the other Vexilian. They were sitting at their usual bench when Alex felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise, a sensation of being watched. He turned slightly, scanning the plaza, and spotted him immediately. Taller than Alara, with deeper blue skin and the insignia of a senior diplomat on his robe. He stood perfectly still among the moving humans, eyes fixed on them with unnerving intensity. Ilara, Alex murmured, I think we have an audience. She didn't turn, but something in her posture changed, a subtle stiffening that Alex had learned to recognize as tension. Senior Attaché Coran, she said quietly, my superior in the diplomatic hierarchy. Should we go say hello? Alex asked uncertainly. Number, he is not here for social interaction. Ilara's voice had taken on a flatness that Alex hadn't heard in weeks. He is observing. Observing what? Me, my behavior, my conformity to Vexilian standards. She carefully dabbed at her lips with a napkin, removing any trace of ice cream. It is standard protocol when a diplomat shows signs of excessive integration with a host species. Alex felt a cold that had nothing to do with ice cream settle in his stomach. Are you in trouble? Not yet, Ilara replied, her eyes finally meeting his. But continued association with you outside of official duties may be deemed inefficient. The implication hung between them like a physical presence. Their ice cream outings, their friendship, all could be forbidden if Ilara's superiors decided it interfered with her diplomatic functions. What can I do? Alex asked, hating the helplessness in his voice. Nothing at present, Ilara said, rising smoothly from the bench. I must return to the embassy and file my observations for the day. Tomorrow is the cultural exchange presentation. Right, the presentation. Alex had almost forgotten. A formal event where both species would share aspects of their culture, music, art, scientific achievements. The entire diplomatic corps would be present, along with high-ranking officials from both sides. Will you attend? Ilara asked, something like hope coloring her usually measured tone. I wasn't planning to. It's more for the actual diplomats, not the tech support guy. Please come, she said, then added more formally. Your presence would contribute to a comprehensive human representation. Before Alex could respond, she had turned and was walking with perfect Vexilian posture toward where Coran stood. The senior diplomat inclined his head slightly as she approached, and together they glided away, two elegant alien figures parting the human crowd like water. Alex remained on the bench, the remains of his ice cream melting forgotten in his hand. Something had shifted between them, or rather, around them. The private world they'd created over cones of vanilla and caramel had been noticed, and not in a good way. He thought of how Ilara had described her world. Hard, sharp, preserved. A place where efficiency trumped joy, where individual preferences were discouraged, where even something as simple as ice cream would be considered a wasteful indulgence. For the first time, he wondered if their friendship might be more than just an unusual cultural exchange. What if it was dangerous for her? The cultural exchange presentation was held in the embassy's grand atrium, a soaring space with walls of smart glass that could shift from transparent to opaque, creating stunning visual effects. When Alex arrived, slightly late and feeling underdressed in his best button-down shirt, the room was already filled with diplomats from both species. Humans mingled in groups, gesturing animatedly as they spoke. The Vexilians stood in precise formations, their posture perfect, their interactions governed by a complex hierarchy invisible to human eyes but essential to their social structure. Alex scanned the crowd for Alara and finally spotted her near the central platform where presentations would take place. She wore formal diplomatic attire, a high-collared robe with intricate geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Even from a distance, he could see the difference in her bearing. This was not the Alara who savored ice cream and asked thoughtful questions about human customs. This was cultural attaché Alara, representative of Vexilia, perfect in her adherence to protocol. Standing nearby was Karan, his imposing presence commanding respect from both species. His gaze swept the room continuously, assessing, evaluating. Alex hesitated, suddenly uncertain. Should he approach Alara? Would acknowledging her publicly cause problems? Before he could decide, a chime sounded, signaling the start of the presentations. The human delegation went first. Earth's chief diplomat, Dr. Helena Chen, introduced a series of artistic and scientific achievements. A string quartet played Mozart, earning polite attention from the Vexilians. A physicist demonstrated quantum entanglement with a holographic display that drew murmurs of appreciation. A chef presented Earth's culinary diversity through molecular gastronomy, creating edible art that bridged science and sustenance. Throughout it all, Alex watched Alara. Though her expression remained neutral, he noticed the subtle tells he'd come to recognize. The slight tilt of her head when something interested her, the almost imperceptible shift of weight when she was thinking deeply. Then it was the Vexilians' turn. Their presentations were precise, technically impressive, and utterly without passion. Mathematical proofs of stunning complexity. Engineering solutions that made human technology seem primitive. Architectural designs that defied conventional physics. Efficiency personified. As the Vexilian portion neared its end, Karan stepped forward. To conclude our cultural exchange, cultural attaché Alara will present her analysis of human social customs and their implications for ongoing diplomatic relations. Alara moved to the center of the platform with fluid grace. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the formal cadence of official Vexilian discourse, nothing like the almost musical quality Alex had grown accustomed to during their private conversations. Humans prioritize emotional satisfaction over efficiency, she began, her analysis clinical and detached. This appears counterproductive, but results in unexpected adaptive advantages. Their social bonds, while seemingly irrelevant to functional outcomes, create support networks that enhance resilience and innovation. Alex listened as she dissected human behavior with scientific precision, noting the approving nods from Karan and other senior Vexilians. This was what they wanted: objective analysis, untainted by personal perspective or, worse, appreciation. Then, as her presentation neared its conclusion, something changed in Alara's voice. A subtle shift most humans wouldn't notice, but Alex had spent weeks listening to her talk about ice cream. To illustrate the practical implications of these observations, she continued, I will share a specific human custom that demonstrates their unique approach to existence. From beneath her formal robe, she produced a small container. With deliberate movements, she opened it to reveal a perfect scoop of vanilla ice cream. A murmur ran through the human delegation. The Vexilians remained silent, though Alex saw Karan's posture stiffen. This substance, Alara explained, is called ice cream. It is nutritionally inefficient, temporarily satisfying, and ultimately impractical. She paused, her eyes scanning the room until they found Alex. Their gazes locked as she continued. It is also one of humanity's most profound achievements. With that statement, so contrary to Vexilian values, she lifted a small spoon and took a bite of the ice cream. Her eyes closed briefly, not in the analytical assessment of a diplomat, but in the simple appreciation of a sentient being experiencing pleasure. When she opened them again, she looked directly at the assembled delegates. Vexilia values permanence. Earth teaches us the beauty of impermanence. Ice cream melts. Moments pass. Nothing lasts. And perhaps that is precisely why everything matters. The silence that followed was absolute. The humans appeared moved but confused by the unexpected philosophical turn. The Vexilians were utterly still, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. Karan stepped forward, his movement breaking the spell. Thank you, cultural attaché, for this unique perspective. His tone was neutral, but Alex could sense the tension beneath the words. This concludes the formal presentation. Delegates are invited to continue discussions informally. As the crowd began to disperse, Alex made his way toward the platform. Ilara was surrounded by curious humans asking questions about her ice cream demonstration, while Vexillian diplomats stood at a noticeable distance, conferring among themselves. When she finally saw him approaching, something like relief crossed her features. Alex Davidson, she acknowledged, the formality of her address contradicted by the warmth in her eyes. That was unexpected, he said quietly. Was it inappropriate? For the first time since he'd known her, Ilara seemed uncertain. Human custom includes personal testimonials in formal presentations. I observed this in several diplomatic recordings. It wasn't inappropriate, Alex assured her. It was brave. Before she could respond, Karan appeared beside them, his tall form casting a shadow over their conversation. Cultural attaché, your presence is required for debriefing, immediately. Ilara straightened, resuming perfect Vexillian posture. Of course, senior attaché. She turned to Alex, adding formally, thank you for your attendance, Mr. Davidson. As she walked away with Karan, the senior diplomat turned briefly to regard Alex with unblinking eyes. The message was clear. You are a disruption. You are unwelcome. Alex stood alone in the gradually emptying atrium, the echo of Ilara's presentation still resonating in his mind. She had risked censure from her superiors to share something true, not just about humanity, but about herself, about what she was learning, not just through clinical observation, but through experience, through friendship. He didn't see Ilara the next day, or the day after. His calls to her embassy extension went unanswered. When he asked the human diplomatic staff, they offered vague explanations about internal Vexillian consultations and revised diplomatic assignments. On the third day, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He prepared a small cooler with 2 perfect scoops of vanilla ice cream and headed for the embassy's main entrance, instead of his usual service door. I'm here to see cultural attaché Ilara, he told the security guard, a human who recognized him from his IT work. Sorry, Alex, the guard said, looking genuinely apologetic. I've got strict orders. No unscheduled visitors for any of the Vexillian diplomats. Can you at least tell me if she's still here? Still on Earth. The possibility that she might have been sent home, removed from her position because of their friendship, had been keeping him awake at night. The guard hesitated, then leaned closer. Look, I'm not supposed to say anything, but since your embassy staff, there's been some kind of shakeup in their delegation, closed-door meetings for the past 2 days, lots of official communications back to their homeworld. And Ilara? Still here as far as I know, but restricted to her quarters when not in official meetings. The guard straightened as another embassy worker approached. That's all I can tell you, man. Sorry. Alex nodded his thanks and retreated, the ice cream in his cooler already beginning to melt. Just like everything else that mattered, apparently. He spent the evening in his apartment, alternating between worry and frustration. Had he inadvertently caused problems for Ilara? Had their ice cream ritual, something that brought such simple joy, created diplomatic complications he couldn't even imagine? He was deep in these thoughts when his apartment buzzer sounded, probably his neighbor asking to borrow tools again, he thought as he pressed the intercom. Hello? Alex Davidson. The familiar voice sent a jolt through him. May I enter your dwelling? Ilara. He buzzed her in immediately, then scrambled to straighten up his small living room, cursing the day-old takeout containers and scattered laundry. So much for making a good impression on an alien diplomat used to perfect order. The knock came moments later. When he opened the door, Ilara stood there in civilian clothes, a simple tunic and pants that looked remarkably human compared to her usual diplomatic attire. Her posture was less rigid, her expression less guarded. You're here, Alex said unnecessarily. How did you... I tried to... They wouldn't let me. May I come in? She interrupted gently. It is inefficient to converse in hallways. Right, yes, of course. He stepped aside, watching as she entered his apartment with curious eyes, taking in the small space with its mismatched furniture and cluttered shelves. Sorry about the mess. Your living space reflects actual living, Ilara observed, unlike the sterile embassy quarters. There was something different about her speech pattern, Alex realized. Less formal, more human. Ilara, what's going on? I tried to reach you, but they said you were restricted to your quarters. Are you in trouble? Did I get you in trouble? She turned to face him fully, and for the first time she smiled. Not the slight upward tilt he'd occasionally glimpsed during their ice cream outings, but a genuine, deliberate smile that transformed her features. I have been relieved of my diplomatic duties, she said, and despite the serious words, her tone held no regret. What? Because of the ice cream presentation? Partly. Senior Attaché Koran had already filed reports about my concerning integration with human customs and excessive emotional engagement with native species. The presentation was deemed final evidence of my unsuitability as a Vexillian representative. She moved to his window, looking out at the city lights. I have been officially designated as emotionally compromised. That's ridiculous, Alex protested. You're the perfect diplomat. You actually try to understand us, not just study us like specimens in a lab. Yes, Elara agreed simply. That is precisely the problem. From a Vexillian perspective, I began to see humans as people, not subjects. I developed preferences, opinions, friends. She looked at him meaningfully. I chose ice cream over efficiency. Alex felt a weight settle in his chest. I'm so sorry, this is my fault. If I hadn't… No, Elara interrupted firmly. Do not claim responsibility for my choices, Alex Davidson. I chose to continue our ice cream ritual. I chose to include it in my presentation. I chose to express a personal perspective rather than a clinical assessment. Her eyes held his. For the first time in my life, I made choices based on what I wanted, not what was expected. That is not something to apologize for. But your career is changing direction, she finished for him. The Human Diplomatic Corps has offered me a position as a cultural consultant. Since I am now considered too emotionally invested to represent Vexillian interests, they believe I may provide valuable insights from a unique perspective. Alex stared at her, processing this information. So you're staying on Earth? If that is acceptable, Elara said, and beneath her composed exterior, Alex detected a hint of uncertainty. My understanding of human culture remains incomplete. I require further research. Research, Alex repeated, a smile beginning to form. Into ice cream, maybe? Among other subjects. Elara took a step closer, her movement more fluid and natural than he'd ever seen. Humans have many customs I have yet to explore. Foods beyond ice cream, music, article dancing. She paused, looking at him with those unblinking eyes that somehow no longer seemed alien to him. Friendship, perhaps even more than friendship, eventually. The implication sent warmth spreading through Alex's chest. That sounds like a lot of research. Could take years. I am very thorough, Elara replied seriously, though her eyes held a glint of something like humor. And Vexillians live considerably longer than humans. We have time. Well then, Alex said, reaching for his jacket, we should probably get started right away. Mrs. Patel's shop is open for another hour. Ice cream at night? Elara asked, her head tilting in that way he'd grown so fond of. First rule of being emotionally compromised on Earth, Alex smiled, offering his hand. Ice cream is appropriate at any time of day. Elara took his hand, her fingers cool and smooth against his skin. I believe I will enjoy being emotionally compromised, she said softly. As they walked together under the city's night sky, hands still linked, Alex thought about their unlikely friendship, a human IT specialist and an alien diplomat, bridging vast differences over scoops of vanilla ice cream. The universe was stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. You know, he said, some might consider this whole situation inefficient. Elara's lips curved in that new, beautiful smile. Perhaps, but as I have learned, some experiences transcend analytical comprehension. She squeezed his hand gently. And those are precisely the ones worth having. Ahead of them, the lights of the ice cream shop glowed warmly in the darkness, a beacon of cold sweetness and simple joy in a complicated universe. And for two beings from different worlds, it felt exactly like home.